So, are Western tanks underpowered in Warthunder? Before we start, just let me make it clear that I'm not a Russian bot nor a NATO fanboy, I'm just trying to see things through as neutral here. I also understand that this is a game, so not everything can be modeled 100% the same as it is in real life. But I also believe that some vehicles, specifically in top tier, are really badly made compared to others. So what I'm trying to reveal here is how badly or how well Warthunder models some of its vehicles. So let's get into it.
Grind, pain, joy.
I personally have maxed out almost 4 nations, Russia as my main, Germany is my second, the US and the UK, which is only missing the last 2 tanks in their tech tree. I do not have vehicles from any other nations in top tier, but I have plenty of experience to fight against them, so I can give some feedback about those as well. The biggest difference is between Russian and Western tanks that the Russian tanks, outside of their composite armor, they are also heavily protected with arrow blocks, which is somewhat modeled correctly as much as possible in Warthunder, making them quite difficult to defeat, while the Western tanks mostly doesn't use additional arrow plates as much as the Russians. I look at this as a quick solution to boost up their lack of protection without changing much of their base model, a cheap solution which does work in real life. The Western tanks, however, gets a different kind of upgrades. They are upgrading their inside armor layout and not the outside as the Russians do, which leads us to a big problem what Warthunder faces.
I don't know.
No one fucking knows exactly what kind of composite armor layout the Western tanks have and how effective they are. Everyone is guessing and showing footages of the Iraqi war, how effective the Western tanks were, or the Ukraine war, how badly the Russian tanks are performing in real life, and etc, etc. Just one side note on that, both are bad examples. Iraq is bad because most of those tank engagements were unfair, or in Warthunder terms, the Iraqi army was heavily up-tiered. Most of their stuff were downgraded export versions of obsolete old unit of tanks. Ukraine is also a bad example, cause tank-to-tank engagements are really rare. 95% of the tank losses happen because of drones and landmines. Fortunately in Warthunder we don't have to worry about mines nor drones at the moment, so it is only about tank-to-tank or CAS engagements most of the time, which lead us to a well-known issue with Western tanks in game: lack of armor. What I generally find weird in Western tanks in Warthunder is that they feel paper thin protection-wise, especially the Leckler, the Abrams and the Challenger. There are too many classified parts about these vehicles which Gaijin just felt better to ignore and leave it as it is, but I do not think this is the right solution. You see, Western tanks are heavy for a reason, and it's definitely not because the crew is overweighted. It's their armor layout which makes them heavy. Yet in game it feels like these monsters are missing a huge chunk of armor, what they do have in real life. If I was Gaijin, I would try to made up some part of the armor layout which is unclear or unleaked to balance out their mobility and heavy weight. Okay, the Challenger is not as bad compared to the Abrams and the Leckler. It has some armor which does save you sometimes. Yes, the lower front plate is basically non-existent and anything can pen you from there, but the upper plate and the turret cheeks are quite reliable compared to the Abrams. I personally don't have the Leckler yet, but whenever I see one I can one-tap it most of the time. I found it weird it can be one-shotted through the turret as well. The mobility and the firepower is quite good though. And about the Abrams. Well, it is much worse than a few years ago because of the turret basket feature, but outside of that the armor itself is just don't work. It is a 70-ton plus tank made out of carton. Basically anything can pen you even frontally. When I face an Abrams I can shoot basically anywhere I want, outside of the turret cheeks of course. I don't have to aim carefully like against a T-90 or a Leopard, just aim at the center and boom. Even if it survives the hit, it will be crippled most of the time. Second, the blowout panels. They are fucking broken. These are one of the key features which separates Western vehicles from Russians. Western tank lovers love to say multiply times on Reddit how fucking good feature is it compared to the Death Trap T series, which is halfly true, yet in game you explode no matter how you get penetrated, which is pure BS from Gaijin's side. While even if you pen a Russian tank ammo carousel, it just refuses to explode sometimes, which is pure BS again. It feels like Gaijin gave a shadow buff to Russian tanks to have at least 15% chance to not get exploded, even if you get penetrated through the ammo carousel. I can't prove it, but it feels like it. Turret basket, a feature which is also halfly baked by Gaijin and only implanted to certain nations which they generally hate or want to nerf, the US and Germany. You know, when I grinded Russia back in the day, I was so mad because of the Abrams and the Leopard's survivability. They had better mobility than Russians, better firepower, rate of fire, and also command fire control feature. So even if I penned the guy first, he turned on me and one-shotted me before I could fire my gun again because of the slow reload time, making them extremely difficult to destroy. So Gaijin came up with the idea to have a big ass turret basket, and if that thing gets damaged by the slightest, it will break down and stuck until it gets repaired, making you unable to use command fire control, and it is pure BS again. I know from a gaming standpoint they had to balance both tanks out to be online with the rest. It was a good idea which get badly executed. If it was me, I would only make the turret stuck if the ring itself get damaged. If the basket itself get damaged, I would just give a movement decrease, depend on how badly it is damaged, yellow, orange or red. Free ideas Gaijin, take notes if you want. Conclusion. So yes, Western tanks are underpowered protection wise in Warthunder, especially compared to the Soviet and Russian armor. Yes, there are elements in the game which are badly represented, as mentioned before. If Russian tanks only have two small weak spots on the front that can kill the tank, why not Western tanks have the same level of protection? Why does it feel like their frontal armor layout is filled up with just empty air? Why does it weigh 70 ton plus if there isn't any armor to protect its crew? Why Gaijin making Western tanks worse than they should be, even though there are numerous public informations and leaks which reveals that certain Western tanks are much better than in game. Of course, it doesn't mean the Western tanks are trash, but they require different kind of playstyle, mostly camping and sniping, what I personally hate to do.
You suck.
Of course, there are people who mention the tournaments, that they are used the Abrams a lot because it's a great pick overall, and I don't doubt that, but I'm not a pro gamer who plays on tournaments. I'm just a fellow who plays casually like 99% of the player base and gets frustrated every time when they pen my Abrams or Challenger frontal armor with a low caliber gun. You know, I'm a guy who likes tanks in general, no matter the country they are made of. I love Russian tanks, that's why they were my first nation and also still my mains today. Gameplay wise, if I have to rank these four nations what I do have, I have to say the most frustrating one to play in top tier is definitely the US by a mile. Mostly because of the turret basket and partly because of the insufficient armor. To be honest, the TEM has better survivability than the Abrams, and that thing is a real light tank. Next one would be the UK because of their lack of mobility. Sometimes it is really painful just to climb on some hills or repositioning yourself on the map. And last but not least, both Germany and Russia are excellent gameplay wise, but I would say I prefer the Russians a bit more over Germany in top tier, because I grinded out the anti-air and the aircraft as well for Russia, so I have more impact on the matches than with the Germans. Nevertheless, I wish all Western tanks would have similar protection like the Leopards. Anyway, this is it from me today. What do you think about these things? Are you satisfied how Western tanks are playing out in the game? Leave a comment, like and sub for more if you like this kind of content, and see you in the next one.